Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at foster care and adoption needs in Connecticut. My name is Jacqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for close to 30 years, and although I may be familiar with many of the topics I bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help dispel the myths and misconceptions that often act as barriers. Join us as we open our doors to an inside look at the Department of Children and Families.
Nicole, thank you so much for being here on the set with us at Doors to Hope and Healing. It's so nice to welcome an old friend onto our set. Before we talk about therapeutic foster care, can you talk to us a little bit about your history and your role at DCF?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks so much for having me today. I appreciate being here and the time. So I've been in the field about 25 years. Started as a social worker for DCF in the Waterbury office. Held various positions, supervisor, manager, and left to go work in the private sector, and about 6 years ago returned back to the department, which I consider to be my home.
And I'm sure when you came back you saw lots of changes that the agency had gone through over those years that you had been away.
Lots of changes, lots of wonderful changes, really amazing practice, and I think we are one of the national leaders. I know we are a national leader.
It is. It's definitely an exciting time to be a part of the department. So we have had guests on the show that talked about traditional foster care and adoption, and how to become involved, and giving our viewers some information on that. But we haven't touched upon therapeutic foster care. Can you talk to us about what that term therapeutic foster care means?
Sure. So therapeutic foster care is really what we consider to be a specialized form of foster care. Sometimes kids who come into our foster care system have specialized behavioral health needs. These are children who struggle with anxiety or depression. Many of our children have had traumatic experiences, and because of those traumatic experiences, they have what we call traumatic stress reactions. So really, because of their mental health and behavioral health needs, they could benefit from a specialized foster care intervention.
And so that's what therapeutic is, separate from traditional foster care.
Yes.
Is therapeutic foster care something that the Department of Children and Families offers to children who have this traumatic response and they need this therapeutic, a deeper level of a therapeutic home, or is it something that we seek the services of?
Yep, so we seek the services. So in my new position at Central Office, I'm the clinical director overseeing therapeutic foster care and the therapeutic foster care contracts. Right now in the state of Connecticut, we have 16 providers. So there are 16 distinct agencies who recruit, license, train, support these particular sets of parents. And we will make referrals to them.
And are they different from one another, or is their mission and their goals the same?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. So when I went up to Central Office this July, one of the reasons why I was brought up there is, as a clinician, I bring that clinical perspective, and our new commissioner, Commissioner Durantis, one of her goals is really to ensure that children, regardless of where you live in the state of Connecticut, that we have consistent service and service array. And so what I'm working on right now is ensuring that all the therapeutic foster care providers are implementing an evidence-based practice. So all of the clinical intervention is based on evidence, and we know that kids will have that consistency across the state.
Can you talk a little bit more about the evidence-based, what that means to people who might be watching who might not be familiar with?
Sure. Funny words, right? Evidence-based practice, but essentially what that means is these are clinical interventions that have been tested and verified that they work. Sometimes when you work with social workers, they say, well, I do this because I know it works. But with an evidence-based practice, it's had rigorous testing and studies to show this intervention, this manualized approach, works with children from diverse populations, all in many areas. So essentially research and evaluation.
So all of the 16 therapeutic agencies will be consistent in the way that they manage their agencies.
That's right. That's right. And we're very excited about this.
That's great. Are therapeutic agencies operating in different areas of the state? Would you say, I know that DCF has regional offices. Are there therapeutic agencies that are matched to those regional offices, or could a child in one area of Connecticut be placed in another area of Connecticut because that therapeutic agency might be best for them?
Sure. So yes, I mean, it's based on the child's need, and essentially the referrals are statewide, and the 16 therapeutic agencies that we have are really all across Connecticut. So, whether you live in Fairfield County or you live up in Hartford, anywhere you go, we have the agencies to support the kids and families.
And are we still, is it a model that we use, like we use in traditional foster care, that we want the child to be placed closest to their family? Is that still the mindset when a child needs therapeutic level of care?
Absolutely, absolutely. When children are removed, we need to ensure that they are connected to their siblings, their neighbors, their church members, their friends, their school, everyone. Yes, absolutely. So we want to make sure it's as close to their communities as possible.
Which leads me to my next question. So in traditional foster care, like I said, we've covered that on the show, but for our viewers who may not have seen that episode where we talked about foster care and what the roles are and the need is, can you talk about the differences between a DCF traditional core foster home and a therapeutic level foster home? What are the main differences?
I would say that the main difference is the training and the support that they receive from the agency. So, for example, the therapeutic foster parents will receive specialized training. So, for example, trauma in the brain. Many of the kids that we have in care, they've been raised with parents who have had their own multiple adverse childhood experiences. Then their children are having traumatic events. They come into care and they're having stress reactions. And so therapeutic foster care parents not only receive the education to understand what's happening, but also the skills. How do we intervene? What do we do? And then also, I don't want to say, we don't want to pathologize our kids, right? Because kids are strong, they're resilient, they come with their own set of strengths, and it's really knowing when a child needs extra support or when to pull back and let them live as a normal a life as possible. Are
there different qualifications to be a therapeutic foster parent that differ from being a traditional core foster care parent?
No, really anyone who has a willingness to learn, a willingness to be there and support the child through good times and bad, allowing clinicians to come into your home and help support you. The agencies, the 16 therapeutic agencies, they provide not only the training and the education, but also support. So for example, they have 24-hour on-call. So, if a foster parent is putting a child to bed, it's maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, the child's struggling, parent is trying to intervene, but they know that they need that little bit of extra help. They can call the agency, a clinician is on call, they'll sort of walk them through it, or in some cases they'll come out to the house and say, let me walk with you, let me help you.
So that's an added support that the therapeutic level provides because the children's needs are a little bit different than in traditional foster care. So how does our agency work with these 16 agencies? Are there meetings? Is there oversight?
Yes, I view the 16 agencies as my partners. It's really hand in hand. We definitely have quarterly meetings. We have trainings together. We're in constant contact about children's specific needs, but then also what's the practice nationwide? You know, are there other states that we can learn from? It's a very close collaboration.
And do you have meetings, or do the regions have meetings with the 16 providers that are in their particular region to talk about kids that need placement?
Yep. In fact, just yesterday I was in the Hartford office, and we were having what we call a matching meeting. And essentially the TFC agencies in that catchment area are around the table. Social workers come in, they talk about their kids, what their needs are, what kind of support they need, and then the agencies will say, you know, yeah, I think I have a home. I think I have some parents that could help you. And that's how we make the referral.
That's great. And what about the recruitment process? Does DCF recruit therapeutic foster families, or is that an expectation of the therapeutic providers?
Yeah, the therapeutic foster care agencies, they really do their own recruitment, but there is a bit of, you know, back and forth. So let me give you an example. If we have a core family, a DCF licensed family, and if they are struggling with meeting a particular child's needs, sometimes we will ask a therapeutic foster care agency to come in and provide those services.
Okay.
So the family remains licensed by DCF, but the TFC agency is providing those clinical supports and services.
And could a therapeutic provider, a foster parent, decide that they'd rather be a core foster family or vice versa?
Yeah, we work very collaboratively. It's not about us, it's not about the agencies, it's about the children and the families. What are their needs and how can we best meet those needs? So it's
not a competitiveness between the two agencies in recruiting.
No.
That's a wonderful plan, because it is all about the children and who could best meet their needs, their level of needs. So what about the typical age of a child that's in therapeutic care? Is it, because I know that you talked about the trauma, is there a certain age that you consider a child more appropriate for a therapeutic level of care?
Sure, it's usually a bit older, 10 usually and up is typically the ages we see, but it also depends on the situation. The referral process to the therapeutic foster care agency also includes a clinical consultation. So DCF social workers in the area office, they'll meet with the RRG, Regional Resource Group clinicians, to talk about that as part of the referral process.
So can you talk about that consultation that you have with the RRG and what the RRG is? We haven't had the RRG on yet to talk about what they actually do. So if you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I know we talk in such acronyms. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
DCF has a set of social workers who are licensed clinical social workers, such as myself. And we do 3 different kinds of consultation: intimate partner violence, substance use, and mental health. And so if a DCF social worker is struggling to meet a child's needs, and if they think they could benefit from therapeutic foster care, they'll sit down with one of the clinicians and talk about that and see how could this be helpful to the child and the family. So the age depends a bit on what the child's needs are.
Okay, well that's a great support that you have for those 3 different levels. So talk to me about the training. So is the training that a therapeutic provider different than that the core foster family goes through, as far as I think it's called TIPS MAP training? Yep,
that's exactly right. So really any foster parent, whether you're licensed by Therapeutic or DCF, all receive that same standard TIPS MAP training, but then the therapeutic foster care will receive additional specialized training. So again, I go back to trauma in the brain. So for children who have experienced chronic neglect, or maybe they've been exposed to intimate partner violence, we know that repeated exposure to that kind of neglect and abuse actually alters a child's brain. It alters the way they think and the way they feel. Now, that's not to say that kids don't heal and get better. And essentially the mantra of therapeutic foster care is children heal within the context of relationships, and children get better within the context of families. And so the training is really about understanding the research and the book stuff, if you will, but then also how do you intervene? What's the best way to help these kids? I also like to add that it's not just the kids, because our children, right, they come to DCF not in isolation. They come with parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, and how do we work collaboratively together to get that child back home and as safely as possible?
Which just made me think about our work with kin. And can a kin, which is we identify as someone who is close, either a blood relative or somebody in their life, can they be licensed as a therapeutic provider if we feel that that's a good match and that child needs that extra level of care?
Absolutely. And I like to think that it's oftentimes even an additional layer of support, because these are complicated matters, right? We both have families. Everybody knows that sometimes families have difficult dynamics, and maybe they've been struggling to help their family member for a long time. And there's a lot of feelings and emotions. And then when you bring a child into that situation, it could be even more complicated.
Sure.
So really the TFC agencies are well positioned to intervene in a clinical way to really help and heal everyone.
And keep the children with family whenever possible.
Absolutely.
So I know that our agency's goal is always reunification whenever possible, and for a child to be with their family or reunified back to their family. But in the therapeutic level of care, can that foster parent adopt that child if that child becomes in need of an adoptive resource?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, certainly our goal is always back home to wherever it is that the children are coming from, aunts, uncles, grandparents, but sometimes there are situations where a child can't return home or can't be placed with a relative. So yes, adoption definitely on the table, but also looking at, it's not all or nothing. It's how can we, so maybe a child is going to be adopted by their therapeutic foster parent, but how can we keep those other people in the child's life?
That's wonderful. And with the therapeutic training, and even with DCF's traditional core training, are there additional trainings they have to do throughout the year to stay current?
Yep, continuing education. Just like you and I, we're both social workers and required to have a certain amount of continuing education credits, as are the therapeutic foster parents. Absolutely. And their social workers at the agencies work with them. So for example, maybe a child is placed in their home who might have be on the autism spectrum. So how can we help them get additional training to understand that child's struggles? So depending on the need of the child, we'll gear the training towards that.
So that's something that's useful for them and applicable. Nicole, before we end, I know the show goes by pretty fast.
Yeah.
If you were to have a vision in the next 5 years of what therapeutic foster care look like in your new role as the clinical director, what would that be?
Well, I recently had an opportunity to talk about this, and in 25 years, this is the most hopeful and optimistic that I've ever been. We are committed to ensuring that we have an evidence-based practice for our therapeutic foster care kids, and that it's a time-limited intervention, that kids get what they need to heal, parents get what they need, and we return them home, and that there is a continuity. If I come and live with you and then I go back home, I'm still thinking of you. And how do we help all of the adults work together for the benefit of the child?
So that they keep those lifelong relationships.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel about your new position? You said you're hopeful, and it's been 25 years, and you've continued this hope.
It is. It's been wonderful, and I think that the department is, all the work from the previous administration and our new commissioner having a wonderful focus on kids and families. It's great.
And you have staff that you supervise at central office?
I do, yes, I do. I have social workers who work with me, and then I'm every day working with the staff in all 6 regions.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of our show today. It was wonderful to have you on, and we'll definitely have you back because I know that as an agency, we're evolving and developing, and lots of changes are always happening. So we'd like to be updated, and we'll definitely have you back on.
Okay,
So
thanks.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jackie. Take care.
I like to go hiking. I like bike riding. Some things I like to do outside are like trying to build some stuff, like a little miniature fort. I like dogs and cats, horses, mostly any type of animal, even reptiles. The perfect home for me is like an old house, like kind of like a rustic type of house. I really like old stuff. I like old movies, old games, old music. My favorite song is Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. I like science and reading. I like a lot of books, like chapter books. And I like to hear about stories about other people, like what they've been through. The kind of family I'll be looking for is a mom and dad and older siblings, the one that I go have fun with. I would like a mom who is very nice to animals and me. The dad I would like is a very funny type of dad and very creative. I like to build stuff. The nicest thing that anybody ever said to me, that I look cute in my glasses. Please adopt me so I can have a good life, a good home, some good family.